Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today with the RealNex user group for June. We're delighted today to have with us Nick Miner CCIM, a member of the RealNex Advisory Board, CCIM, top producing agent in Scottsdale, Phoenix market of Arizona. Nick is Senior Vice President at Orion Real Estate Investment and specializes in investment sales, and he calls he's self-proclaimed client fixer, so working on challenging deals and trying to help his clients deal with some interesting assets. Nick's been a great proponent of RealNex and has worked with us for a number of years on the advisory board, and has been a real power user of our desktop CRM and the legacy. As many of you have joined us from the REA background. We've done tremendous work recently and continue to elevate the game on our cloud CRM, and more and more are now dropping the desktop and moving fully to the cloud, and some are still trying to figure out if now's the time. So wanted to go through sort of this case study with Nick about his journey from REA to the desktop to the cloud, and how that's worked, how it's some of the challenges, and some of the efficiencies he's gained now by being able to move to the cloud version and becoming a power user there. So Nick, let me turn it over to you, and we will go through your presentation, and then of course, as always along the way, if you have questions, use the question feature on the GoToWebinar, and we'll do our best to address them towards the end of the session.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the RealNex team letting me have a chance to talk about the journey of coming from a long ways from the 3x5 note cards to where we are today. So if anybody has any questions, my contact information is up there on the screen. Hopefully you're all seeing that right now. And so it's funny how when I first got into business in '98, so we're talking 22 years ago, the successful brokers in our office were always, all you need is a 3x5 note card, a rolodex, and a phone. And I'm like, okay, so that's great if you've been around for as long as you and you kind of know everybody, but as a new broker, it just seemed very inefficient, and trying to figure out how to best utilize that time and how to be more efficient. And not saying I'm an old guy, but I'm slowly starting to show my age here. And, as you kind of go through this, at the end of the day, you just got to realize exactly what it is that you want to use to be more successful. And, part of that was, hey, we went from the rotary phone to, organized Rolodex cards, still using 3x5 note cards. And then, look, laptops finally showed up. And then who remembers the old brick phones from cell phones? And, it's, again, still very inefficient, just using, spreadsheets, or Lotus 123 for some of those people that might even remember some of that stuff. And then, as you kind of like jump to and say, okay, well, where are we today? And so today, I would argue that, you probably got something similar. You got multiple monitors, you've got your iPhone, you got your iPad, and you kind of use all these tools kind of in tandem together while you're out in the field or while you're working the phones here at the office. Kind of jumping into the CRM history where I started, obviously Act 3.0. I have a lot of friends that know this very well because this is how it all started. And, as you kind of migrate, this was like a big technology change going from, just the 3x5 note cards and a Rolodex. Then, Act and then Aries for Act came along and added a property component, to where you started seeing the benefit of using technology to make your basically the ability to track everything. And one thing I'll mention really fast is that it used to be the database was the one that who had the most accurate information was the one that was most successful in our office. And then as you kind of started building these different tools, you got to learn your own workflow. And so when I basically in my mind, I I went from carrying the 3-ring binder that had a photo that I would take, go down to the Kodak, get it developed, have the property records and all that information, moving it into a CRM type system. Again, like I said, started with ACT, then went to Aries for ACT, and I kept bouncing around, and then eventually CoStar Aries, and then CoStar 2000, and then this conversation that CoStar was going to make it all a CRM attached to their database, the comps database. Obviously, that never really materialized. And so it left a lot of people just trying to figure out, well, what do we do now? And so, that's when, I looked at REA, and Tim probably remembers some of this stuff where it was pre-SQL. And so, it had its challenges then. This is kind of when I started dabbling from the CoStar Aries jump into REA. It was a little, like anything else, it was a little tough to kind of move stuff around. I mean, it just, the UI is not great. I mean, it kind of floundered a little bit. But Tim, knowing Tim, he was trying to figure out how to, upgrade his system. And in the interim, I had a little run-in with RealHound. It fell really short for me. What happened with it is it was promised that it would sync multiple users' databases together. And that was, at the time when I was in an office, we had 15 different agents all working from the same database. And the problem here is you have 15 different laptops all trying to merge the same data, and it was just it kept crashing and it wasn't working well. And all these CRMs have always been really geared toward, at this point in time, the individual agent having their own personal database, which, I mean, a lot of people still do, but it's still, again, not ideal. Especially if you've got a team and you're working with a whole bunch of different people. So then, obviously, Tim took it upon himself to fix that issue, and the RE9 was born, the top version, as kind of how I like to say it. He was able to put this on a SQL database system that was very robust, very powerful. I remember him coming out to my office in Phoenix. He did a big training for us, how we could really utilize the system. So we customized our REA database for the 15 of us. And, we went through and took the time to learn everything. And one thing I will tell everybody listening, whatever system you do, you got to learn it. And I got to tell you, the way that Tim has now taken all this powerful information from our old database that was on a desktop version. Yes, you could access it using like Log Me In or, go to your desktop. It wasn't very functional still for being outside of an office. And again, it's just a matter of the times have changed. And so, that's kind of where it all started. And, and it was very hard, and Tim and Jeff, you both know this, that it's been very hard for me to want to convert 100% to the web, just because of how I had our REA database on the server set up, because it was so robust, so like well refined, and so easy to, like, once you kind of learn the quick keys and where everything was and how the system worked, it was pretty much bulletproof, and we did really well. So now, after being poked and prodded and kicking and screaming all along the way, I finally committed to the web only. I feel like I need to say I'm like Alcoholics Anonymous here or something. Committed to the web only, and and so since switching to web, it has made it a lot easier. And so some of the advantages that I want to kind of cover with a lot of you was real fast, and then I'll show my screen and how I do it live, and then Jeff, if you want to take any questions along the way, once I kind of go into the web platform, please let me know. But at the end of the day, being on the road, and especially within the past 60, 90 days, not being physically in an office, I'm glad I made the switch before this all happened. And, you know, just to be able to work really remotely like you really want to, and know that your information is still there, still accessible, is definitely the big key for me making the other big switch. Some of the main things that we'll kind of talk about that I want to just do a quick cover of is, you know, kind of what the desktop looked like. Obviously, here's kind of a good snapshot of it with the UI. It was okay. You know, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff moving, and I remember when we would onboard new agents, how daunting it would look to them whenever they would see kind of this system. And so, you know, it's nice that now with the web version, it's a little toned down. It's not so busy, and so that's where, you know, it makes it a lot easier to move into nowadays. So what I'm going to do really fast right now is I'm going to close down this part, and then I'm going to bring over, that's my son, by the way. He's much older now. And then hopefully you all can see where I'm at with the web. Okay.
Right page.
Yep. So this is my actual live database, and you know, I got a buddy whose birthday's tomorrow, and so where I typically live when I'm in the system is like everybody else, right? You have the property kind of at the center of your database, and then you have just the relationships and the managing of those relationships and where they are in the cycle of a deal. And I spend a lot of time on this dashboard initially just to kind of quick look at what's on my schedule for the day. But then during the day, what I find myself doing a lot of is I jump over to the leads tab. And then on the leads tab, what I'll do is I'll work on different projects at different parts of the day. So one of my assignments was an office building I've got for sale up in Cave Creek. One of the things that I will say really fast, and I want to give a shout out to my buddy Jeff Gordon for reminding me of this. He helped me, because one of the challenges I was having was if I was to go to Paul's record, and if I wanted to update him on a status here really fast on this project, just make him active here really fast. The challenge I was having, and part of the things I was doing, was right here in this status. I took the time to go through and kind of number kind of my workflow. So if somebody calls me either off a LoopNet or I get an email or whatever, I will update the status on the project field right here, and then I say, okay, so initial inquiries, a 1, and then suspect 2, prospect 3, and I kind of work all the way through my whole workflow as it relates to an active assignment. And so that, you know, the numbering system helped out dramatically, which is why I want to give my shout out to my buddy Jeff for that. And it's because what happens is when you're over here, this quick sort, I always want to know, well, where are people at in the cycle of the deal? And so one of the guys in my office, he made a quick inquiry about it. I sent him some information, and then I actually tracked the source over here. That was another thing that I changed as well on a lot of, as we talk about the customization, I really wanted to make sure that I was able to track where the sources are coming from. Are they coming from people in the office? Are they coming from Crexy? Was it an e-blast? Was it one of just me doing email, LoopNet? Where are these people coming from? And where are they at in the interest level of that property? And so one of the things that this used to say was date opened, I changed it, it said initial contact. So that way I can find out who's a fresh lead or who's an old lead. And, you know, just like every deal, it seems like you're always spending time trying to figure out, well, did I lose somebody? Was there somebody that I hadn't talked to? Where are they at? And, you know, it could just be that the person just initially called just to get some research information and they're not going to do anything with the property. So, you know, that's fine. But what this turns into is this allows me to send this as an owner report, because undoubtedly what ultimately happens at some point, you always get asked, well, what have you done for my listing? I'll show you that in a second and how I do it from the system. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that right here, this project, this is kind of my working field, was this lead card, and it's tied to a property and a contact. And even though I've got it turned on to where all my emails sync through Google and G Suite, and any email that comes in or any email that goes out, it gets attached to the property record. This right here, this one lead card, that's exactly where my owner reports come from. This to me is the external report, or the quick look at where am I in the deal cycle with somebody. And so this is a very important piece to make sure I always have filled out. This is where I'll do an update. He actually reached out to me on a property I have over on 94th Drive. That's a land listing I have for sale. He just came in today. I have him as an initial inquiry, so that's somebody I'm going to have to follow up with. And then I created all my different sources of where I get people that contact me. And, some of this has changed over the years, but, it's always nice to kind of look back at what you're doing as far as your marketing dollars. This tells me where I need to spend more of my money. He actually came to me from looking at it on LoopNet. It was just an initial query, so I always like to date and say, hey, reached out through LoopNet. And then I know that from right here, he's going to show up when I look at my dashboard for this project. He's going to show up, and that's the thing that why I use the dashboard feature probably more than probably a lot of other users, but it's just because that's my snapshot of the day. So when I have time to make calls, or if I'm going to filter through my database and find people that I really want to talk to that day, I'm always still looking over here at this dashboard just to make sure I'm not missing something over here. And then, I'm always looking at, did I make sure I check off my to-do list for the week? Now, this to-do list, obviously, there's some older stuff. A lot of this might just be from people that I reached out to and talked to a year ago and said, hey, check back whenever, and it's just a reminder, again, of following up with people. I know that you can schedule events and whatnot, but, I do that as well. But when it comes to, looking at the reporting features of what I plan to report to an owner and how I plan to track that deal flow, I really focus, like I said, on that project card right here. I don't know, Jeff, if anybody had any questions yet as to, before I kind of jump into what some of the reports might look like that I'd send to an owner.
It's a question about adding more than one lead to a project at a time.
More than one lead to a project. Oh yeah. So I mean, if you can easily go to multiple contacts. I know Tim's done some of that in the past, and you can go through and you can select 3 or 4 contacts and say, add to this project. Or while you're talking to somebody, maybe it's a broker and their client, and then you can still create the one history record, and then you would associate them with each other on that project. I believe is hopefully the question that they're looking to answer.
Yeah, you can link, like if you get a signed call, you can link that one person to multiple projects at the same time.
Right.
As well.
Right. So then on a project really fast, I made a few changes right here because listing date and listing expiration, those were on the property record, but not on the project record like we had talked about, Jeff. And then I also said, okay, so due diligence, financing, extension date, and listing price. I wanted to be able to track that. And the reason why I wanted to track that is I've created a few filters, and I'm a big fan of filters. What I have done is I've created the filters that I would typically have shown on a spreadsheet. What do I mean? Okay, so you have an active assignment. I have active properties that I have listed for sale. I created a filter, and what I wanted to make sure of is I had the basic details for all my active assignments. What's going on? What's our, the amount. This is where the whole listing price and amount, amount was coming from the property record, listing price was coming from the deal. So I still kind of trying to solve that disconnect a little bit on how that works. I'm sure there's probably other people that have better solutions than my clunky way of doing it. But so be it. So, here's all the kind of, properties I've got for sale. I can easily say, okay, well, how does that look? What about your buyer activity? What kind of buyer rep assignments are active right now that you're working on, where they're at in the process? You know, and I changed the columns too over here, so that way I would only see the stuff that I really care about. So like for buyer reps, here's all the stuff for buyer reps, but then when I switch over here to the filter of my current for sale listings, and I have one that says off market as well, but I would also change my columns because different things have different meanings, right? So like, oh, okay, if I sell this property, my commission structure is right there. Here's my listing price. Here's the date. You know, this ties into when it's in escrow. This is just kind of listing start, listing end dates, and this is just kind of how my projects work. And again, what I will do from there is I can jump into that project, and if I really want to do the deep dive, I usually just copy, come over to this dashboard, go back to this lead tab, and then I paste that in there. And then now I've got all my stuff that's really tied in to that property or that project, and that so you can kind of see. And what ends up happening a lot of times for me is I have probably like 15, 20 different REA windows open, which on the desktop you could never do. That was very, very tedious because on the desktop, if you remember, you know, it looked more like this, and you know, you just couldn't do a whole lot with that. I mean, you could have maybe 3 or 4 windows open at any given time. Now, if you look up here, I've got, you know, all these different ones just associated right now with what I'm doing right now in RealNex. And you can make the other nice thing is I can make a change on any one of these, and it's all syncing back to the database. So that way, if I have something open or if I don't, I'm good to go. You know what I mean? So that way you can just kind of keep it going and keep it rocking pretty fast. And you know, you can make your calls for the day. And usually what I do a lot of times is when I get a new assignment, I'll do the reverse filter search. So if I was to get, let me just jump off of Jason here really fast. I even have like saved searches and saved groups, but you know, some of my saved filters are, let me just jump into one here really fast. For my contacts is, hey, if I have a new retail listing and I want to send it out as a quick blast to all my retail agents in my database, guess what? Here they are. And it's going to filter through. And what'll end up happening is I'll get a phone call while I'm doing this, and then I'll end up jumping over here and updating, you know, a project record over on this side while it's busy doing all the heavy lifting on the contacts and pulling up all the retail agents on this tab. And so I just consistently kind of, my workflow through the day just kind of keeps changing depending on, you know, being intentional, making your calls, to the getting the call back, and you know, making sure you're updating the database and you know, kind of moving forward. The other thing that I would mention really fast as well is, you know, so you know, I mentioned the exporting feature to a client. So right here, typically what I would do is I would then output all this to an Excel file. And I know Tim's done some custom reporting for me, and I would, you know, still working through some of that, how it looks. But, you know, I'm so proficient in Excel, and I'm sure a lot of other people are as well, that what I end up doing a lot of times is I take that same data, I export it to Excel, and this is the start of my owner report. And all I do is I just clean this up really quick. You know, I know it's all for sale, and it's another kind of quick way just to make sure that all these records are tied in with the right project. Again, all the same information just came out of there. And then I like to do a lot, just pivot charts really quick. Let's see here where we're at. So I'll do a quick little pivot chart and table, and we'll just show you where. This is just me doing some of my owner reporting. And then, oh, I didn't grab it all. Hang on a second here. Let me grab it all. Insert, pivot chart, pivot table, existing. Do that. And then this is where it brings in all those columns of all those data that was all tied into that project record. And so I like to just see simple stuff like, what's the status? What's going on? Where are people at in the deal cycle? So you can create kind of quick little charts and tables, and this is the kind of stuff that I would send to a client. And then I would even just add the quick little deal where you have like just add the filter, and then you can say, okay, well, right here, who are all my people that you've received an offer from? Okay, so you received one offer from Daryl Bloomberg on this project, and then I track over here. This is all in the database as well, what his terms were that he offered, and that's all going to match up to what you see right here. So that was a lot to be thrown at you on how I just use dashboards. The other thing, real fast, and Jeff, I don't know how much time you want to give me. I could probably talk for hours.
As soon as you're through, there are a bunch of questions, so I think we've got an hour blocked. So take the time.
Okay.
You might want to show the built-in project reports as well. So, you use the Excel output from the columns, which is great, but there are a number of enhanced.
Right. There's the whole bunch of new reports. I know you guys are always adding them in there all the time. So one quick thing on the app, I don't really have any screenshots of it, but what I would tell you is it was really nice that Tim made it to where, and I know Bobby's done, or not Bobby, but Matt did a recent quick little update on the user forum, how to use the app. So I'm out at the property. The first thing I always do when I've got the app open is I will type in an address and just see if I have it in my system. So let's see, I was at 3200. I was at 3200 this morning, and what happened was I was out at a property, and this was not in my database. And so I immediately just opened up the app, took a quick photo. It's a little medical office building in Tempe. I was actually at the eye doctor. Thought it was kind of funny. I didn't have the information of the building in my database. And so what I did is I created a group. So when I'm in the field, if you remember on the app, you take a photo, you can hit the auto address. It pulled up the address, filled it all in for me. It's great. And then I took a quick photo. Then I went off on my day, and then I make sure I added it to this group called Properties to be Researched. And that is just the group that I know that if I'm happening to be searching in the property side of my database, and and I see in the group that says properties to be researched, I know I don't have the owners associated with that. So then I would go and do the research to find the owner or whatever, and fill in the other information. Or if I have a junior guy, I would say, hey, make sure you fill in. And then I highlighted key fields. And this was a carryover from the desktop as well, which was, okay, what fields are really critical for me? And so obviously building square footage, the description, I've obviously updated quite a bit over the years, especially when it got into the retail. I actually took a lot of these definitions from ICSC just so that way, if somebody wanted to get into and use my database, a junior guy or a partner, we would all be talking the same language. So I made sure that I use a consistent key and verbiage there. And then as you kind of go through, was it for sale, for lease? And then the other thing on the buildings, and this is where it kind of ties into those projects of, what I'm looking for off market or on market, it's all about the filters. And so the more data you put in here, you just got to kind of take a step back and think, okay, well, if I'm going to track, all this information, I want to make sure I can find it. And that's where I loved having all these filters, because I had to think about it a little bit. I had to say, okay, for my active assignments, I need to make sure, the type is for sale, right? And then the status, is in process. So again, you just have to kind of think it all the way through, and then know that the database will mirror that process. And so that's kind of the nice thing about the flexibility and the power of the web, and being able to have multiple windows open. I grab and I move things all the time, and I'm throwing them on different windows all the time, just so that way, I can, because we all know that our intentions are, hey, I'm going to make my 50 phone calls today to owners. And as I'm making those calls, even in my blocked hour, once I come off that blocked hour, guess what? I get barraged with phone calls coming back, and then you're responding, and then, the rest of your day. And then, this lets me do a lot of production with not a lot of help. And that's the reason why I would encourage anybody, take a hard look at RealNex and make sure it's something that you will take the time to learn. Once you learn it, and I'm sure Tim and everybody else would agree, once you learn it, you're like, God, why have I not done it this way before? I mean, as much as I joke around with some of the guys here in the office, hey, I should just go back to my 3-ring binder and 3x5 note cards. As successful as that and easy as that is, that doesn't work today. You'll be able to track stuff, and this allows me to track more and more because, as Tim would say, not a lot changes on the commercial building itself. It's just the relationships associated with the commercial buildings, and that's what I like to track.
Awesome.
So that's a lot of stuff being thrown at somebody. So
that was a lot in a half hour. So well done. There's a bunch of questions. If you could, Nick, go up to settings and show Frank and others, how did you set up your system tables, particularly for the lead statuses that he was asking about?
Oh yeah. So in the system tables under project setup, so some of these were out of the box, right? And then I just basically came over here and
you can change any of them. So we give you each
yeah.
project type. There's a status, but
here's default. This is kind of what came with the system was right here. And I said, okay, well, for me, let's just pick the stuff that I know is really important. So on a for sale assignment, I said, hey, you get the sign call or you get the initial inquiry from LoopNet or wherever. Then they move to either a suspect or prospect. And the difference in my mind is a prospect is somebody that I'm targeting. A suspect is maybe somebody that comes out of left field. And then, from prospect, how interested are they? And so my system will say, hey, they're interested enough for me to want to move them on up, or they're really not interested. So, I dropped them down to, number 14, which is the last one of my series here. And it would, not interested. I mean, it's that simple. And so, I modified that one. I spent a lot of time on the project setup, especially on the for sale stuff. On the buy side, because I do a lot of buyer rep and listing, on the buy side, it was a little bit more pared down. I used more of, and I don't really report that back to a buyer because usually when I'm talking to a buyer, I'm usually communicating with them quite frequently about different potential properties, and I try to track as best I can, what properties we're looking at, because if they're in the system, guess what? It's really easy just to add them to a project right here. Like if I knew, this Denny's was going to work for one of my clients, Michael, I would just drop him in and just say right here, it's a potential property for him. And then I would just, then I still track active, inactive, lost, or dropped. And then I would say, if it's not a property he didn't like, then I would just, it's not interested. And then I would just track it and say lost. But I always try to track, all my different properties that I have in here with some sort of project or some sort of buyer or some sort of sell assignment.
All right.
And it just helps me stay focused.
Yep. Another question is about email threads, and one of the new things that we've added is not only do we track the email itself, if you set up your sync to Gmail or Outlook, it'll go into the contact history, but we also now have the attachments that stick with it. So in the past, it takes the full email, not just the message of the email, but you can open up the email itself and see the attachments that are there. Even if you've deleted it in your Outlook or Gmail over time, it's all stored and retrievable in a string and very neatly consolidated into the RealNex folder, into the history folder.
Right.
You would need to link it to a project, but it automatically links email address of a client.
Right. Like right now, here's what he's talking about is we traded every email that, Jeff now sends to me, the user groups and everything else, it's all there. And then if you click on that, then for me, because I am a Gmail person, it always does it as an Outlook email folder. So then I have to do a couple steps to make sure that I can open it. So.
There's a question about a virtual assistant stuff with updating. We don't currently, but we're looking at setting up a service bureau for helping for data entry and data management. But one of the great things with the app we found, and many of you are using it, is the voice dictation. So you can actually, as faster than you could get it to a virtual assistant, you can get the job done. So a lot of the data entry can be done through dictation. And we use tools, and we sync because we have the Outlook sync. If you use Camcard, for example, you can just take a picture of a business card, and that would automatically get fed into your contacts. And if you use something like EverContact or EverConnect, it actually will take emails from people and capture their addresses and bring them into your system. Or you could actually highlight name and address and email on a website and bring that in as well.
Right. And like I said, the app is nice just because, like I said, I was at Topgolf, property wasn't in there, took a photo, updated the information, threw it in a group, and now I've got stuff that, you can always come back and say, oh, if I ever go there, if I ever want to go sell the Topgolf over here in Scottsdale, at least I got the start of a property record.
Nick, one of the cool things, and there's a question about it, you've got all these tabs open. Some people don't know, and you could actually put two of these. If you've got multiple screens or a big screen, you can put two of these side by side. You can just lift that tab, and if you right clicked on contacts or one of the other elements, it asks you if you want to open it up in a new window or new tab. And otherwise, you're gonna open up one window and keep replacing that. So can you show how you can open up multiples?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, right here, I would just say, hey, let's just search for Tim Cray. And then it would be right there. And then I would just drop him right there. But, the other thing that's really nice about using Chrome and the G Suite is you can actually now group all this stuff together. So, like, if I wanted to just say, okay, I want to group all of my, REA tabs together. Now there's even a feature to where you can even, group them together within Chrome. So. But there you can have like Jeff right here, and then I can have my property records right here. I mean, like I told you at the beginning of their third show, is I had literally 3 screens and, 50 tabs open at any one time. Is there any other questions?
I apologize. I got a power outage here, so it knocked my internet out for a second. So it took me a second to get back. That's why I was gone. So let's see. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you just got to know that whatever it is that you do, think about your workflow and think about how you can make this mold to your workflow so that way you're more productive.
Yeah, question was, did you set this up yourself, or do you have any help in setting up and configuring?
Yeah, so it's easy enough to set up yourself. You just got to figure out what's important to you. If I'm a retail broker, guess what? Some of the important fields for me that I redefined was north, south, east, west, corners, and property description. And this would all kind of carry over into any of the other services within the RealNex platform, like if you were to take it over to Market Edge or whatever. But then I have filters that I have set up too, because I took the time right here and I added in all the values of all the major cross streets in Phoenix that have basically a retail corner on just about 2 out of the 3, sometimes 4 out of 4. And so now I want to know all the properties that are on 75th Avenue, I can query based on 75th Avenue. And, granted, I know now, with the power of the web, I wouldn't necessarily have to go to that level of detail just because of the keyword search feature now. But before the keyword search feature was in there, I had to, track those corners pretty heavily, and I still do. And that's the thing is, I still like to track them because I'm just kind of a creature of habit. It all came from the desktop, and and I have filters that are already set up that I created that they are basically talking about cross streets. And I want to know, property at Scottsdale and Camelback. Guess what? When we're a whole bunch of people using this database, I made sure that, those key fields, again, were filled in, because if you don't fill it in and it's not a key field, you're never going to be able to filter and find. And so that's kind of how it's like anything. You just got to take the time to make sure up front what's really important to you to be successful. And once you know that, make sure you make those fields stand out so that way you're always consistently filling them in. And then if you have junior guys or assistants later on, hey, they know that this is an important field, and if it's blank, hey, let's get it filled in. And then I always track different sales package. Whenever a property comes on the market for sale, guess what? I attach the property record or attach the sales package to it as well.
A couple of things that now when you start to key in the address, you can actually go into inline editing, put it in the address,
right?
Automatically geocode and parse the address so it gets the direction and separates the number so you can find everything by the street, and then do your canvassing that way, which is a very nice new feature.
Right. But like I said, I also, but before we had that, I had to make sure that, we were consistent. Yeah.
A question about the sync with Outlook. Can you just show us where you set up that sync tool? And it does, we do sync with Outlook and Outlook 365.
Yeah, so, right.
And by the way, I'm sorry, there's some people might not have all of the privileges. So if Nick is showing something that you don't see on your screen, it could be because of an administration setting. So if there's a system administrator in your office, if you've got a multi-user setup, you may not be the person to do the configuration. But by and large, you should, under My Account, have the drop down for sync, and then you can go into your Outlook sync and set that up to set up your sync frequency and which folder you want to sync. So you might have things that are personal, you keep those personal, and then other things that are going into the folder that you want to sync.
Correct. And I jumped. I know I'm going to take a little jab at Tim since he's not live. I left Outlook about 8 years ago, and I haven't looked back. And I'm so thankful because I moved to G Suite, which was Google Business Apps at the time, to where all my email and using Google Drive and Sheets and all that are all stored by Google servers and parent company Alphabet. And so I do not use anything Outlook related. That was my move going from desktop to more cloud-based, and I did that, over 8-9 years ago. I love Excel, I love Word, I love PowerPoint. Outlook was always buggy and it always crashed, and because I would use it to the max capacity by multiple folders and contacts. It just kept breaking for me. So that's the reason why I moved everything over to Google Business Apps, which is now called G Suite. And I haven't had any problems whatsoever. And it's 100% web, which is, again, being mobile office is nice. So right here in your account, you just go to Google Sync, you set it up one time. I link it up to the account that I want it set. I don't have it syncing contacts just because I didn't want to bog down the system with duplicates potentially because my Google G Suite account syncs to my iPhone, and I didn't want 18,000 records coming into my phone. And plus now that I have the app and I have access to it either on the web on my phone or on my iPad or my laptop, I don't necessarily need to sync my contacts anymore. The one thing that would be nice, and I keep asking for it, Jeff, is that
I
Google
never heard it
Chrome
before.
extension. Google Chrome extension, so that way when I'm in my Gmail email, and if there is a contact there, just having a nice little feature right there on the right-hand side, be able to update my contact right there and have that flow through. So that's still a big wish list that I have for Tim to do for me. So
We've got it on the list maybe 500 times every time you mention it.
I
So
know I'm
we've
going
got
to
a
keep
long,
beating
long
that
list
dead
of work
horse.
to do. The team is busy, and there's a number of new things that we're working on. Particularly, and everyone's going to see it soon if you haven't started to see some of it incrementally. Is a lot of new enhancements to the Market Edge lease tool, and particularly we're finding a lot of need for lease analysis in this environment to do comparative and restructure of leases to be able to provide that, as well as with the new accounting rules coming out for lease accounting, to be able to provide those values for your clients. So look for that, and a lot of work being done there to be completed in the next couple of weeks. Any disadvantages with Outlook integration? You have a personal bias, I get it, but and you described some of the power that you're finding or did find in Google versus Outlook, but we don't find any disadvantage to integrate, except as Nick said, I mean, from time to time, depending on what your traffic is, and you may overload your system with contacts that aren't pertinent, but if you set it up with the right folder structure, you're getting the right contacts and email exchange and calendar entries, so you have them everywhere. So we don't see any disadvantage. The advantage is really on that coordination side. I don't know if you've tried to ever construct an email string and try to go back through a history, and some things are nested and some things are coming from one direction or another in Outlook, and they're hard to pull together. By using the sync, and it all comes into your history folder very neatly, and it makes it really well organized to capture that.
Oh yeah, well, and I didn't really even show like it. You can, when you're talking to somebody or whatever, you can easily see like your emails, and you can sort based on what type of history you're really looking for instead of just email or whatever. But the other thing that I do a lot of times on my dashboard is on the history, or even just right here. And if I am in a quick search for looking up one of my projects, like 4818 North 7th, I'd type it in, and then it would pull up all the history. That's kind of the internal marketing side of it, like helping me remember where I'm at with different things. That's where you can do that on the history, and it's searching through like probably 800,000 records right now. And so, here's kind of some just different things and different people that's automatically syncing up to as it relates to that project. So it's really nice. I use this dashboard quite frequently, especially when I'm making a lot of calls. When I sold a property, I needed to go back and just kind of look at, where we were with everything, and just making sure everything got finalized and where it was all coming in, and, making sure who responded when they saw the just closed announcement. And then, then right there, I can easily just, click all the ones that I want to follow up with, and I can say link to, and then just jump straight to them. And then it opens up a whole brand new window.
Awesome. Hey, Nick, do you track, one of the questions is, do you track other brokers' listings, or do you just have
all the time?
Yeah, I would think so. So what's your best practice? What's your recommendation for how do you do that?
So whenever this goes back to the email, so what'll happen a lot of times is, for instance, I don't know if Matt's on this call, but let's pick on Matt Harper. Yeah. Oh, he's not? Okay.
Oh, no, well, then I'll
pick on
Matt Harper. Let's see, there's a few Matts.
Yeah, so Matt.
That is on.
Yep. Oh, he is? Oh, all right, Matt, we'll make sure that we get this deal done, all right? So I'll search really fast in my history, and then what'll happen is every broker seems to send out broker blast and whatnot, and so I don't know why it's not popping up. What would normally happen is it would just say, here's a new property that got listed. I would just jump to the contact record or whatever, and then I would link him immediately to a property. The other thing is when I get an email from, I'm not showing my email, but if I get an email on this property, I would then add in the attachment, and then right here, like I was telling everybody, this building status is important to me. So I like to track what's for sale, and whether it's listed or I have pocket listings, I have off market. If it's an escrow, if a broker tells me it's an escrow, I can track it. But, then it starts becoming really unruly if you're trying to track too much. And so this is kind of where if you're going to take the time to specialize in a specific property or property type, you could probably manage it, and this will be a great tool for you to just set up a quick filter, and you'll be able to see what's going on, and then you can attach it. The thing that I miss from the desktop that I would love to see at some point on the web is the drag and drop feature for attachments. So if you get an email that has a PDF, being able to drag that over. You used to be able to drag that over and drop it onto the property record, and it would just automatically attach. So I don't know if that's in development or whatnot, Jeff, but the other kind of workaround would be that Chrome extension too, where you'd have a button you could just say attach.
Gotcha. Do you use comps at all?
I use sales comps quite a bit.
So
let me jump over to sales comps.
Comps, I guess, first, do you use it, and then how do you make the most out of the comp system for your business?
Yeah, so I do use sales. I track my own personal comps through here because I use that as part of my marketing. So I have a group in here of, I track different retail centers when they sell. Then I have my own properties that I'm tracking. So if I was to jump to just the triple net properties, and if I needed to do a quick little sales comp, I could easily say, okay, pick 2 or 3, and then I could then do an output to a quick report for those 3. I did it again. Let me jump back over to it here really fast. And just say, let's just pick 2 or 3 of them, and then I can easily do a quick report in the current one selected, and then I can say, hey, here's my sales comp list of the properties that I've sold recently, and I could give this as a marketing piece to somebody else with my information and what I sold, and who the buyer and the seller was and what I track.
Awesome.
So yeah, I use the sales comp quite a bit. You just use
the CRM, but anyone also with Market Edge, if you've got the full suite, you can import those comps into your Market Edge presentations for your BOVs or other sales support for pricing on it. And you can say it's easy import from CRM into Market Edge, and then the presentation has a little bit more variety than the reports that you get out straight out of CRM. And
right. Yeah, this to me is really just my own, usually personal sales comps that I'm tracking right here, or comps that I was really interested in and just trying to find out a little bit more. And so I track a lot of that too. So
excellent.
And then everything always links back to our property records. Then even when you're on the property, you can even see like the last time it sold too. So
yeah, and from property you can create a comp. So just if you're in a property record, hit the quick button, put the closing information in, and it goes right into your comps table with a link. Excellent. I think we've exhausted the questions. We've coming up on the top of the hour. Any closing comments, Nick, that you've got?
Yeah, I would just say, make sure you, I would just say that I've been a big fan of RealNex and REA and what Tim has done over the years. And I would just say that it can be daunting. It can take a little bit of effort to make the switch, but once you kind of put together your own personal workflow and you kind of understand what helps you be successful, the database itself, you can mold it to exactly that. And if you can't figure out how to do it, the other great thing is, having developed a relationship with Tim over the years, is I can send Tim a random email at 7 o'clock at night, say, God, I wish it would do this, and then either I get a response by 9 o'clock at night, or the next morning saying, oh, that's already in development, or oh, that's a good idea, please explain more, how would you make it work? So that way there's some thoughtfulness on any change that you see, is usually from a best practice, which I got to commend you guys that you listen to your users. And it's not not that you're going to do every request like a Chrome extension, but you're listening and you hear me and you understand that there's reasons for the request. It's only to make me more efficient with my time, so that way I have to be less spending time in here.
Understood. So that Nick, so that Tim doesn't get bombarded with emails, we do have a feature request inside of the system in the top right, and we look at those every day. And by putting it through that system, we're able to see the frequency of similar requests from multiple people to determine what work we do. So that's very helpful. And so when we start seeing the same thing, with a lot of different directions, that elevates it. So if you use that feature, that's really helpful to streamline the input, as well as for us to manage that process and determine what to work on. So Nick, we really appreciate your time. Great presentation. We thank you for your support. Great ideas, even though we don't implement them all, but sooner or later, your persistence will pay
I know
off.
you will eventually.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for your time. Remember to join the Facebook user group, and if you need any archive information, you can find it there or on our YouTube channel, and use that user group there to post idea suggestions and share your best practices with the group. And again, hope you're all doing well and getting back to work and using the platform to be as productive as possible. So thanks again, Nick. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.